like this, you will find these cell bodies scattered within that enteric nervous system, especially in the myenteric plexus. This vagus will synapse in those ganglia, in those cell bodies. Those cell bodies have their neurons, have their cell fibers supplying the muscles. So those cell bodies represent postganglionic parasympathetic fibers. Postganglionic, because that's your ganglion. Those fibers are postganglionic. And this vagus here is preganglionic. So those postganglionic fibers are found in the wall of your stomach, small intestine, large intestines, gallbladder, or even in the pancreas. Okay? And in Hirsch processes, you don't have this ganglia. They fail to migrate. They don't develop. So you have no parasympathetic postganglionics. So your vagus cannot act, cannot synapse in there. So they cannot promote the constriction or a peristalsis of your large intestines usually. And so it cannot move, it gets obstructed. Now you have a large colon. You have Hirsch processes because there is absence of your ganglia. These ganglia, which are your cell bodies of your postganglionic parasympathetics. Do they have afferent? No. In the GI, your afferents travel primarily with your sympathetic fibers. When you go into the pelvis, you would have afferent fibers traveling with your parasympathetics. But here, it is primarily traveling with your sympathetics. Now, this is vagus. What does it supply? What part of the gut? Foregut and midgut. So up to your transverse colon, this is the normal way it goes. But in the descending colon, the vagus doesn't reach your descending colon. So what supplies your descending colon? Your hindgut. Pelvic splanchnics. What are pelvic splanchnic nerves? In the pelvic splanchnic nerves, you find these cell bodies where you have in the same area where you have your lateral horn, but they don't form a whole nucleus. They're just small scattered cell bodies, but they're in that same area. Okay, and what part of the spinal cord are they present? S2 to S4. So only in the small area between S2 to S4 do you see the cell bodies. Okay? So the cell bodies are here. They have their fibers going here in the anterior root of S1 and S2 to S4. So here you have your S2 to S4 nerve. So they're going this way. So here you have your anterior ramus. Now, do they connect to your sympathetic ganglion here? How do they come out? These fibers would just come out directly from the nerve. They don't form a white ramus. They don't form a white ramus to connect to your sympathetic trunk. They come out directly from the nerve. They separate from the nerves. What do the S2 to S4? They form your S2 to S4 will form your sciatic nerve. But before they form the sciatic nerve, you have these fibers coming out to supply your pelvis, primarily. So, from S2 to S4, these are your cell bodies. They go this way. These are, again, your parasympathetics to your hindgut. They will travel to your inferior mesenteric ganglion. Do they synapse? No, because they're parasympathetics. They will go all the way to your hindgut. Oh, where is it? Here. Here's your sigmoid. And in the sigmoid, They synapse on the ganglia in the enteric nervous system, just like your vagus, and supply your hindgut. So your vagus supplies foregut and midgut. Here, this nerve is called the pelvic splanchnic nerve. It's a preganglionic parasympathetic fiber. Okay? Because all your postganglionics are in the wall. All your postganglionic parasympathetic fibers are in the wall of your GI, or your intestines. So, first thing you have to know is foregut, midgut, and hindgut. What are the organs? Then you say, if I talk about the source of the neurons, where are they? T5 to T9, foregut. T10 to T12, midgut. L112 to hindgut for sympathetics. For your parasympathetics, vagus from the medulla, and your pelvic splanchnics from S2 to S4. That is the level of the central nervous system. Then when you talk about these nerves, what are they? Greater thoracic splanchnic, foregut. Preganglionic sympathetics. Lesser and least preganglionic sympathetics to your midgut. Your hindgut is lumbar splanchnics. Okay? What about your ganglia? Your prevertebral ganglia. Celiac for midgut, foregut. Superior mesenteric for midgut. Inferior mesenteric for hindgut. Okay? So that is your sympathetics. For your hindgut, for your parasympathetics, vagus from the medulla. It supplies your preganglionic fibers. Anastomose on your enteric nervous system ganglia in the wall. That's foregut and midgut. And for hindgut, you at S2 to S4, and then it forms your pelvic splanchnic nerves, which are your preganglionic sympathetics, and they synapse in the wall. Okay, and then you add your afferent. Afferent follow your sympathetic fibers all the way to and then enter your dorsal root ganglion, enter the dorsal horn. Okay, 6 questions in this, and it's all asking those things. What is the ganglia? What is the nerve? Preganglionic. Just remember, your sympathetics have a preganglionic and a postganglionic. The preganglionics synapse in the ganglia. And the preganglionics are either your greater, lesser, least, or lumbar. Okay? On the other hand, and then you have your postganglionics, which really don't have a name, right? On the other hand, your vagus, they're all preganglionic sympathetics, parasympathetics, either from the vagus or the pelvic splanchnics.
But can you still pass this like nerve plexes?
Yeah, I think what's confusing you is when they pass this ganglia, when you look at the ganglia or the ganglion, when you look at that ganglion, let's say this is your aorta. Here's your celiac trunk. Then you have all these nerves passing. Okay? And scattered in this, so this is a celiac plexus because it's around your celiac ganglia. It can have a greater thoracic splanchnic that ends in your ganglion. And then you have so here's a ganglion line here. Then you have a postganglionic fiber synapsing coming out here. You can have a vagus that is going to go into the ganglia, but it's just a nerve fiber just traveling in there. Why does it travel here? Because it may actually it may enter your branches of your celiac trunk, but it is still one fiber. It doesn't synapse. It's just the axon. So even if they enter a ganglion, what it means is just structurally when you look, a ganglion is a structure that has cell bodies in there. So when you have cell bodies, nerve fibers can synapse in there. And then this will have fibers coming out. So you can have synapse in there, this another fiber coming out.